Hi, can you hear me? Are you muted?
I can hear you.
I can
Awesome,
hear you.
excellent. How's everybody this morning?
Doing good, doing good.
Awesome. Well, I'm notorious for being an early bird and starting on time, so we're just a few minutes here, and Alana will let some folks in. So there we are, it's 12 o'clock. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Burns. I'm a realtor here in Pittsburgh. I've been an agent since the spring of 2016. So pulling up on 6 years here. I work all different kinds of sides. I used to be productivity coach, transactional coach, and mostly now I'm just a full-time agent. So today's class is going to be on contract to close with buyers. I just want to be really upfront with everybody. This just scratches the surface. I normally teach an 8 to 9 hour class on working with buyers and an 8 to 9 hour class working with sellers. So we're talking about that maybe down the road here. But this barely, kind of scratches the surface, but hopefully we'll give you a lot of information as we go forward. Also keep in mind, I cannot possibly touch on all little topics, even if I'm zipping through. There's a lot of nuance, and as we know, in every single transaction. So please just keep in mind that the information I'm giving you here is just kind of some surface info that will help you get started and keep going. So let's see what we've got first. And I took this graphic from Win with Buyers out of KW Connect, which you can search for on kwconnect.com. But this is a graphic from Win with Buyers. And we're going to be talking about contract to close here with buyers. But just as a quick overview, there's a 7-step process to working with buyers. You've got step 1 leads to appointment. Step 2, prepare for the buyer consultation. 3, buyer consultation. 4, searching, looking, and showing homes. 5, offer and negotiations on the contract. Our topic today, step 6, contract to close. And then step 7, post-close systems. So here we go. The first thing we're going to delve into is compliance. I also want to mention too, I didn't time myself on this presentation. So I'll just kind of watch time and you'll kind of keep me on track if I get too close because I'm a talker.
It's okay if you go over.
Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about are the required documents in Command. So I'm not sure if your other market centers might have a little bit different docket with Command, but this is our Pittsburgh market here. So we've got the consultation folder, which is going to include the consumer notice. Oh, by the way, if you want to just click on making this screen bigger on your computer, you'll be able to probably see this better than if you see the whole gallery. So the consumer notice, the buyer agency contract, and your pre-qualification or pre-approval, or if you have a cash buyer, proof of funds. Your required documents in Command for under contract include the agreement of sale. These are just required, not conditional or optional. Agreement of sale, the hand or earnest money, or what the contract calls the initial deposit, the buyer's estimate of closing costs, the seller's property disclosure, and the oil, gas, mineral disclosure or addendum. One thing I want to mention here, or I'll remind myself as we get into the contract about the disclosure or addendum when it comes to the PAR agreement of sale. Then you've got your close folder, which is the HUD or the ALTA or any other settlement statement, as well as a copy of the settlement checks. When we say settlement checks here, we do not mean the check that the buyer brings to closing. We mean the closing checks that settlement hands over to you that you then submit to your market center MCA. I want to just talk really quickly here about common mistakes that we're making on our compliance. The first being incomplete folders in Command, not having all of your documents uploaded into their placeholders in Command before you submit for review, failing to submit a Command folders for review at all, failing to completely fill out the document, not using a proper legal name before you fill out any contract, you want to make sure that you've asked your client what is the legal name that may include a middle initial. It should actually include a middle initial, and we can talk about that later, why that is. Incomplete or incorrect address. Our MLS, when you pull in that data into a contract from either .loop or DocuSign, sometimes it gives the municipality as the mailing address, and that's incorrect. You want to make sure it's the proper mailing address. Believe it or not, the #1 reason that one of our allied resources here for Settlement Elite Closings, Becky Offit, told us in a class about a year ago that one of the biggest culprits is that they get contracts and addendum that are not fully executed, meaning it doesn't have all of the initials, it doesn't have all the signatures. Incorrect or unreasonable closing or contingency dates. We do not want to put undue pressure on settlement and lenders simply because we want to close fast. And then changes to the contract, meaning any addenda that go with that contract need to be submitted to all the parties involved, meaning your lender, the listing agent, or the other side, as well as settlement. So we're going to talk real briefly here about specific forms and common errors. The first one is the consumer notice. And I know that this is probably one of the 0.5% of things from our licensing classes that we actually do deal with on a day-to-day basis, and that is the consumer notice. I'll take it even a step further and say that if our office gets audited, this is one of the main things they're going to be looking at, is when was the consumer notice executed between you and your client. And the rule is signing and dating upon any substantive conversation about real estate, excuse me. So substantive means having a firm basis in reality and therefore important, meaningful, and considerable. So if you're just talking to somebody and they walk into an open house and you say, hi, how are you? And like, fine, like, what brought you here? Oh, I'm a neighbor. Is that substantive to the sale of real estate? No. But the minute you start asking them, if they say, yeah, I've been looking, and you start asking about lenders and locations and are they pre-approved and what are their wish lists, that's a substantive conversation. So this consumer notice should not be signed and dated the same day as your agreement of sale when you're making an offer. That is very rare that you are meeting a buyer and writing a contract on the same day. So when we get audited and the state sees that, that's a red flag. So that could definitely cause you some issues, and the market center some issues. Does anybody have any questions about the consumer notice? That's step 1. Okay, so now we've got the buyer agency contract. I'm just picking out specific ones here that are important when I'm looking through compliance. So the first page of the buyer agency contract should be filled out completely. You should be able to create a template in either DocuSign or .loop that has your licensee information, so you can just keep repeating this document over and over again. This top part should easily be filled out in advance. You want the buyer's full name. I don't typically have the mailing address, but I will have their phone and email here. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you have had the discussion with them well in advance. Do they have another realtor? So you want to be checking no on that line there, lines 13 through 15. Another mistake that agents are making is these dates right here, which is the starting and ending date of your agency contract with that buyer. It cannot exceed 1 year. So if you started on February 2nd is day 1, then February 1st of the next year is your 365th day. Does that make sense? So you just want to make sure that you are following that it's not more than a year. It cannot be a year and a day. Keep zipping through this. Sorry, everybody. The other thing I want to point out, which is a top question from buyers when they read this contract, is under the broker's fee paragraph, where it does say here on line 31, 32, that the broker's fee is paid by the buyer to the broker. We know that sellers pay the commission. So you can explain to clients that this property is listed in the MLS and the seller has advertised that they're paying your buyer's agency commission. The reason why this is important is because what if you're looking at a FSBO or a for sale by owner? You have no confirmation that the seller is willing to pay that commission. So in earnest here, like in reality, the buyer would be owing that commission to your brokerage. You want to make sure that your commission percentage is here, or a dollar flat rate here. And then on this line here, which is probably line 35, is your admin fee. Don't forget to add your brokerage admin fee into your buyer's agency contract. If you forget that and this is executed when it comes time, at the end, you may have a very, I would say probably 90% of my buyers don't go back and look at this, but it may take that one buyer that will follow through on this and say, you didn't tell me about this fee, and therefore you're going to be absorbing that. Does anybody have any questions on the buyer's agency contract? Again, the original rules apply here too. Initials on all pages, and make sure that you have signatures, not just your buyer's signatures on the last page, but the agent must sign it as well. Otherwise, it's not a fully executed contract. Any questions here?
What was your comments again about the fee? When do you waive it? When do you?
Okay, so Mike is asking about the admin fee. This contract is between your brokerage with you as a representative and your buyer.
Right.
You have a choice to absorb that fee, or make sure that your client is paying that. You are an independent contractor. Regardless of what your agreement is with the buyer, the brokerage is taking that fee out of your commission check. So I can only speak for myself, and when I'm coaching, if I've got a really nice listing and I'm making some nice money, I typically absorb that admin fee. I make sure to tell them as part of my service, I'm absorbing that fee for you. The office does have a philosophy and kind of a rule here that if you have a buyer or a client that does more than one transaction in like a 12-month time span, that fee can be waived, but you do want to talk to your NCA and just make sure that that's clear and stated before you say waived on this contract. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the BAC? Okay. We're going to dive deeper now here into the agreement of sale, and I just picked most of my pet peeves here, and then compliance. So what I want to talk about here on this first page is that I call this the top sheet. I feel like this top sheet gets so little attention from folks when they're filling it out, that whether it's the buyer side or the listing agent not correcting you on certain things. This top sheet goes to settlement. It's the first thing that they're looking at when they're going to start your title work. When they send off the data to the abstractor that starts doing the title search. And so I think it's really incredibly important to fill out these portions fully, especially like deed book, deed page. It means that that person down the road, the next person that you're handing this to, is not having to look up that data, because they physically are at the county records office and they are going through floors and bookcases and I've been down there, it's crazy. When they're searching title, this is a real person doing this. And so filling this out completely is very important. I see a lot of agents needing to make corrections in the seller's relationship with PA broker because they don't know if the seller agent if all agents represent the seller or if they have designated agency. FYI, Keller Williams, they're all independently owned franchises, so we each have designated agency. Other brokerages like Howard Hanna, because they have like one big umbrella, they are like the sellers represented by all agents. But that's something to ask. It's a good thing to start building rapport with the listing agent when you're sending in an offer, is to make sure that you're filling that out correctly. Also, my little arrow there is showing, don't forget your buyer's initials at the bottom of every single page. Yeah,
there's incomplete information on the top part. So I submit an offer by the buyer's agent. They only put down last name,
of who?
myself.
No.
I'm fully aware of that. So does it get kicked back to the person who initiated? the buyer's-
100%. Any corrections to the agreement of sale before it's fully executed should be completed by the buyer's agent. Now, down the road, sometimes, I'll just be honest, if that buyer's agent is getting on my nerves and we are executed and I catch something like after the fact or whatever, I will just fix it, have my client sign it quickly and send it back and say, we're not executed until I get these initials. But
You can edit it down.
you should not edit like the original, like with digital signatures. I usually download it as a PDF,
Right.
upload it, and then do a strikeout and repair it. If you don't repair it that way, once it's already gone to the lender and to settlement, then you need to do an addendum to the agreement of sale, and that needs to be fixed. And I'll talk here too, since we're on this first page. It's incredibly important to realize that you want the proper name of an LLC. If you're doing an LLC, we've talked about this at length, you want to make sure before you're taking any listings or whatever that you have an operating agreement for that LLC, so you know who can sign for the LLC. But also this is important to include like an initial with a name, because if your name's Joe Smith, when they go to do a search on that person, they're going to get hundreds of names. And so you might even consider, if it's a common name, putting the full middle name. Okay, they don't have to fully take title, that way you can clarify it later, but for the most part, you want it clear so that there's no issue when they're going to do the title search and searching on that individual as the buyer. Yes.
Just a comment on that. So my husband's name is John Miller, and he purchases and sells a lot of things. And so every time, I mean, we'll go John J. Miller, also still super common. We get from title just affidavit after just so many, him having to verify that that is not him and whatever. And it does hold up title. It just takes things a little bit longer to verify he is who he is and not all these other John Millers. So
This is why we'll talk about the buyer questionnaire here in a minute, but you'll get buyer and seller questionnaires once you go under contract. That's why they're asking for a date of birth and social security number, is to clarify, because you'll get multiple names. Thanks. Anybody? Okay. This is page 2 of the agreement, hand and earnest money. I have a lot of feelings about that. Not only are agents not honoring the 5-day timeline, they're not making themselves aware of it when they're writing an offer. So if you're writing an offer on a Tuesday and you execute on a Wednesday, that hand money needs to be in this office by Friday, because Saturday and Sunday are included in those calendar days. If you know that you are executing on, say, a Friday or Thursday and Monday is a bank holiday, you better make sure that that hand money is in within 24 hours. So I typically, and the rule of thumb that I think PAR really discusses a lot is to aim for 48 hours, not 5 days. But this is incredibly important. And the reason why is, and I say this all the time with my clients, the reason why I make the big bucks is because I'm protecting that chunk of money for them throughout the contract. And this is the first line of compliance for a contract, is this hand money. Yeah.
Oh, so I recently, on my last deal,
You what?
I forgot his name, and I couldn't even believe it. Luckily, the agent was here in this office, so we were able to like solve it right then and there. And what happened was we sent the offer in November, and it was within the LLC, and we just had to do all this stuff. It literally was a month of negotiating, and they literally signed it like December 17th, literally a month and a day later. So I literally was like maybe
So
a
much
week,
going on.
and then it was a holiday, and I was like freaking out. So if in the event, if like say if the listing agent wasn't under the same brokerage as I am in, like what?
You have to crawl on hands and knees and beg for forgiveness. here's the thing, if you're moving forward, get the check in, everything's moving
And I like to
forward,
do it the next day,
Yeah.
like, you know,
you get it in. But if you are terminating over inspections and that listing agent comes back to you, you are allowed to terminate over inspections anytime during the inspection contingency.
Yeah.
But that listing agent has every right to come back to you and say, where's the receipt for the hand money? The hand money is first in compliance before they even
Yeah.
enter into the agreement to inspect.
right,
So when you miss hand money, you are putting that money in jeopardy for your client. So you really want to, if it gets missed, what I would do, or if you notice, so let's say you notice that they didn't get it in by Friday and Sunday is the deadline of the 5 days. I would have my client sign an extension for 2 days on that timeline, submit it, have them sign it, submit it to the listing agent, go, look, she dropped it off on Friday, but it was late. Our office is closed on the weekend. It's gonna be deposited Monday or Tuesday. I'm asking for a quick extension on this because we do have it in hand. It just has not been deposited.
okay.
So you want to cover your backside as much as possible. That to me is not a text, that's not an email. You pick up the phone and you communicate with that listing agent and say, hey, look, I missed this, but it's now in, my apologies or whatever. I had a client from a listing of mine with a buyer that terminated over inspection over something we had already disclosed. And when I went back to the agent and said, okay, you're playing that, you know, like it was not a good experience already a week or 2 into the contract. And I said, where's the receipt for the hand money? And he went, ghosted me. And then I had to go to his brokerage and then filed a complaint on holding that hand money. We refused to release it until we went under contract again.
Are there any restrictions for like cash?
You cannot drop off cash. It can be a personal check, a wire, or a cashier's check. Okay? Any other questions about hand money? I cannot impress upon you enough. It is the #1 line of compliance in your contract. It's so important, and most agents don't think of it as important as it is. Okay, another thing that I see a lot here is under date and time is of the essence. Sometimes you're going to be still negotiating terms. If this is still in play and this hasn't been fully executed, this date says written acceptance will be on or before. If that says February 1st, but you don't execute the contract till the 10th, something is wrong here. What you're trying to avoid is possible litigation down the road for your client. You want all the dates and all the timelines to jive right. So make sure that if you're still negotiating, that this date gets updated. This one here. Does anybody have a question? Yeah.
Can't you add an addendum? I feel like that's what happened with the last one I did, and I don't think I changed that. I think I noted something like added a second page.
If you're executing this contract, this should be part of your strike through with a new date with initials next to it at the same time that you're initialing these bottom pages.
Oh, well, okay, so, well, no, so my buyer sent it out, and so whenever it was like, the listing agent was like, okay, my clients are getting ready to sign, can you do this document, write an addendum, kind of change that date? So that's kind of.
I've never had anybody ask for an addendum to change that date. It's usually at the same time that you're executing the contract. And it's between you and the listing agent. So if they're already signing, just say, hey, update that date, then my buyers will initial it.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the shuffle, that date needs to be consistent with your
Signature.
Any other questions on the dates there? Okay. Missing timelines. So we talked about hand money, we talked about written acceptance, and now we're going to talk about mortgage commitment. If you're in a sketchy situation, and again, it might be just that fraction of a percentage of the time where you might be having like a not so great vibe between your buyer and seller, or you have a seller that's maybe changing their mind, which I had last summer. They were waiting for the second for this date here to expire. And a lot of agents don't send an official written mortgage commitment from the lender to the listing agent. So you're the buyer's agent, you're working with your buyer, you've got a lender that's working this loan, and that date right there should be, this is just a general rule, 10 days prior to closing. This means, this is not mortgage application, this is mortgage commitment, which means that they've made full application, the appraisal has been ordered. They can give a conditional mortgage commitment that will oftentimes say they're waiting on the final result of the appraisal or whatever. But if you read this contract, down at the bottom, it does say they can issue mortgage commitment with some conditions still needing to be met. But basically they're saying, we have gone through the buyer's full lending process and we are committed to funding this loan. So that's what gets all the balls rolling to, you know, the finish line. But you must be watching these dates. And I'll talk a little bit later on just like some of the systems that I use to keep us, you know, on track. I just want to check and make sure. Thank you. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about mortgage commitment? Okay. The next one is your inspection contingency. I'm gonna do just like, and I wish I had a whiteboard here because I love demonstrating this, but for a generic transaction with the pre-specified dates and timelines, your inspection contingency will oftentimes be 10 days to inspect, and then 5 days for negotiations, and then 2 days for the buyer. Once they've finished their negotiating, there's a line in the sand. You'll have 2 days for your buyer to either accept the terms that the seller is offering or terminate. You must follow that timeline. If your inspections are looking like you need to get a plumber in there or you need to get a roofer in there and you're gonna go past your 10 days, you need to fill out an extension, which is a change in terms addendum. You wanna make sure that you're staying kosher in those timelines. If you complete your buyer's inspection on, say, day 4 of that 10 days, and you send the buyer's reply on day 5, the seller has from day 5 until the end of their 5 days to negotiate. So they're looking at like 10 days now. Oftentimes that doesn't happen unless you're asking for everything in the kitchen sink, but they do have that additional time. It doesn't move their timeline up. It's important to think of it as a static set of timelines, because if those dates moved, we would never keep up, right? Those days would just change constantly. So we stick with that. Now, once you send a reply and the seller agrees to it and you sign off on all terms, the contingency ends completely and you're off to the next contingency if there's a loan or an appraisal that's waiting. So this is very important to note, because oftentimes most deals fall apart due to inspections. So if you're inspecting and it comes out like atrocious and your buyer's like, I'm out, like I'm terminating, you want to notify settlement, notify the lender, because they're in the background working really hard to get this to the finish line. You want to notify them right away if it's looking like this is going to tank. Yeah. Okay. Okay. But this timeline is incredibly important and something that you should be putting in your calendar events and notifications. Does anybody have any questions about the inspection contingency? Okay. The last one, or not the last one, the next one is in paragraph 14, is the number of days that we're giving settlement to order the title work. So the way that this works is when you've got a lender, the lender has to order the title work from settlement. So you give the executed contracts to the title company and the lender. You then make sure the lender and title know who each other are, that they've got each other's contact information. The lender is going to send the title order over to settlement and they start the ball rolling. That's why it's so important, we'll talk here in a second, that within the first 24 hours of an executed contract, that you get all of these proper documents over to settlement and to the lender so they can get started. Back during COVID, things were just taking a long time, right? Real people, real abstractors were down at the county office doing the title search, and COVID affected the number of people that could be down there and where they were located and, you know, how they could work. So this date for me personally, and the agents that I coach, we changed it to 21 days because things were just taking longer. I don't think that's the case right now, so you could still keep it at 7. But the reason why 7 to me should probably be more like 10 or 15 is because what is happening in the first 10 days? Inspections. And so if you know, or if you get a feel before that 10th day that this is gonna terminate, you can quickly notify settlement to not order the title search and save them $300, right? They spend that money in good faith, knowing that we're going to close, and if something's gonna tank, you wanna let them know to stop the presses, basically. Does that make sense? You're helping them out, you're being respectful to the fact that they're spending money, and if this is gonna terminate, you know, maybe you can save them that $300. Same thing with the lender. It might help to quickly let the lender know, it does help, so that they can not order the appraisal yet, or rescind it if it hasn't happened yet. It will save your buyer $500 something, okay? Any questions about that title date and the title order? Okay. Something to be aware of when you're the buyer's agent is, are you in a borough, township, or municipality that has occupancy requirements and die test requirements, either or. So what you want is, you want to make sure as the buyer's agent that you're helping keep track of the seller's responsibility. The seller is responsible to apply with the municipality for their occupancy inspection, as well as for their die test. There are dates, if you can see here, there are dates here that apply to the seller here. So you want to make sure that the listing agent is on top of that, that's been ordered. B, once it is ordered, you want to know when it's taking place. Now, you don't typically attend that with your buyer, but you want a copy of whatever comes back from that code officer at that municipality telling them what to repair. Why would that be important information? Well, Ally.
Because if it's a municipality requirement, they have to repair those in order for the municipality to release the lien. You do not want to ask for those things in your buyer's reply to inspection. You want to ask for something different.
Yeah. So if your clients, so let's use an example here. If your clients were super freaked out that there weren't GFCIs in the kitchen or bathrooms or any wet areas that they're supposed to be by code, and they were planning on asking for that in their reply to inspection, if they're, say, in Churchill or Wilkinsburg or one of those other really strict municipalities that require GFCIs or smoke detectors or other things, you don't want to double dip, right? You want to make your reply to inspection hit on other cylinders, on other concerns, and let the seller deal with the things that you know that municipality is going to want them to fix. It really benefits you if you're buying in a certain area to do the research in advance. If your client is bent on, oh, you know, we want to stay in Woodland Hills School District, or we live in Wilkinsburg, I want to live close to them, that you pull up that information. Not all municipalities have the list of what they're looking for. Some have the list, but it's not fully updated, but some just have a general list. You can always call the borough office and ask for code enforcement. They might have a full updated list for you, but this is just a really important timeline that you want to be making sure the seller's on top of, because they have to meet that in order for the municipality to release lien letters for settlement. Now, if you don't know what that means, I'll clarify that. Every municipality holds a lien on your property and will not sell it unless you meet these requirements, if any. Okay, so your seller, if it's your listing, and Allie's going to talk about listings next week, is if it's your seller, you have to apply from the borough or township or whatever, get that done and meet that requirement through these timelines so that the lien letters can be released to settlement, and then now the house can sell. If you don't do that, it can take a long time. Some code enforcers only work 1 day a week in certain municipalities. They work at varying municipalities. So you might get Keith over in Wilkinsburg, he works there full time, but he's sitting in the office also manning a desk. Churchill has one guy and he only works, I think, on Tuesdays. So if you don't get it that week, you're not getting it until the next week. And then when he goes back to the office, what if there's repairs? Now you've got to repair those and then you have to call him back. So this is a very important timeline for sellers to be aware of. Do y'all have any questions about that? There's a lot we can completely dig into there, but Okay, the next item is, are you buying a condo or a property with an HOA, right? Homeowners Association. If it's a condo or HOA, the seller is responsible to initiate the beginning paperwork of the governing documents. And there are timelines that the seller has to complete that and provide the governing documents to the buyer. I'll give you an example. We were making an offer on a property that had a small little HOA out in Murraysville, I think. And within 5 days, we did get the resale documents that had the rules and regulations. And one of the rules for the HOA was no motorcycles. And my client had 2 Harley Davidsons. They were very important to him. He's not getting rid of his motorcycles. So what could have been done differently in order for them to not have gone under contract and now back on the market because we terminated over that, which you are allowed to do in your timelines, is the listing agent. So when you're a listing agent, you've got an HOA or a condo, contact the management company and get copies of those rules and regs and upload them as a supplement into the MLS so that they're able to read that before they go and make an offer. Does that make sense? Save everybody time and the stigma attached to your property now for going contingent and now back on the market. Does anybody have any questions? There's more to dig in there, but you can read those sections about planned communities, HOAs, and condos in paragraph 16. Any questions there? Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about, so we're out of the agreement of sale, but before we go into buyer's estimate of cost, I have a really big just piece of advice for you. If you've done less than 5 transactions, you should be reading the agreement of sale every week. You should be reading the agreement of sale every week. You should know where to find the municipal dates right away. You should know where your mortgage commitment date is going to be right away. You can zip through, pick up that contract and look for that information right away. What are you going to do as a new agent if you suddenly get a buyer and they want to write a contract in person? You can't just send them digitally. You've got to sit down and talk them through the contract. And I make this analogy all the time about the restaurant business. If you were opening a restaurant, would you simply have a recipe or an item on your menu that you've never tested, that you don't know where those ingredients are coming from? Like, I worked in the restaurant business forever. So it's so important. The agreement of sale is your bread and butter into understanding how to protect your clients, both as a listing agent and a buyer's agent. You should know this document snout to tail. All right, snout to tail. Does anybody have any questions about that? I mean, I'm not joking. If you haven't had any transactions, it'll take you 1 hour to read it from start to finish. You should read that contract every day until you have 5 transactions. Make sense?
Mhm.
And then the documents can change. You need to be up on what's happening with your office and with the state on any changes to the agreement. You're gonna ask.
No, I'm gonna say that the first contract I filled out, oh gosh, it was a disaster.
My first contract was in person. And I came into the office and I sat here for 3 hours and read it and read it and read it. I was like, I don't ever want to feel like this again.
Yeah,
I want to know what's in every paragraph.
the listing agent, she was, like everything happened so fast. And the listing agent, like little mistakes that I made, she was nice, she was sending it back, but at the same time, she was like, oh, honey, you need to come over to Howard Hanna. They're
Yeah.
not teaching you anything over there.
Yeah.
She's like, our training, and this was what, last June, so it's coming up on a year now. So she's like, oh, you need to,
Yeah.
you're not teaching learning anything.
Yeah. I can't tell you. I mean, I can tell you. I don't know how many, but I've received just responses back from settlement, from listing agents, on just the clarity of how I fill out a contract. I do not want to see mistakes. I check to make sure I'm looking at zoning maps. I don't just put residential under zoning. There's R2, there's R3, there's mixed use, there's transitional, there's a lot of different zonings. And if that's incorrect and your client signed it and you filled it out incorrectly, that's a basis for termination or errors and omissions, getting sued. Okay, there could be rules about the type of zoning that it's in. So it's like a last ditch effort, if I cannot find that zoning map, that I'll put residential. But it better be darn certain that it's residential, like super suburbs, you cannot misunderstand that it's residential.
So on the, I don't know if I missed it. So on the zoning part, you're saying you just like.
Page 2, it's right here, at the top of page 2. Here, where it says zoning classification set forth in zoning ordinance.
Yeah,
People will put per ordinance. Well, who's supposed to know that? If you're filling out a contract and it's during business hours, you better be calling that municipal office. What is the zoning on this? Okay, if you Google Churchill zoning map, it comes up. But some of the North Hills don't have them at all. But you need to do your due diligence and search for it and have the right. And I open a Google map next to the zoning map and I find the streets and I'm zooming in and I'm zooming in and then it's color coded yellow and I look over the legend, says yellow and I'm like R2. Okay, so yeah, that's anytime you're filling out this document, you need to be thorough and have it on top. So just to reiterate, like I fill out my contracts very clearly and very cleanly. When you're a listing agent and you get those, then you've got to make corrections or whatever. It takes forever to get executed. And the first thing that I think in my mind as a listing agent when I have that kind of offer that has errors is, if this is what the first document looks like, what is the rest of this transaction going to feel like? So it sends a message to me. It might be the best offer, an offer that my clients want to take. But as a listing agent, I kind of buckle up and say, I know what I'm dealing with now. I've got a newer agent. I'll call you and say, hey, I can look you up first. I will look you up. And I'll see in the licensing page how long you've had your license. And then I'll call you though, so I can tell you you're a new agent. Zillow tells me you have had no transactions. We're going to work closely together to make this happen. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help you, because as a realtor, ethically, I'm bound to help all parties. Am I a fiduciary to all parties? No, I'm a fiduciary to my seller or to my buyer. But if I'm dealing with an agent on the other side that's inexperienced, I still have a job to make sure that that contract goes and we're all staying compliant and getting there.
yeah, I lucked out. I think that was how the other agent was
She
saying.
was helpful.
Yeah, so she's like, I ended up being at the lenders because my client was one, so I was like, here I come. I said, I'm on my way. I just had the baby, so he's,
Yeah.
just in the.
You gotta do what you gotta
Person.
do.
And, I'm on the phone to listen agent, she's like, oh honey, you should be at your lender's office. You need to be at your broker's office. Come on over to Howard Hanna.
Yeah.
It's worse to me to work with an agent who likes to cut corners.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not important.
That'll happen a lot, and just say, I'm sorry, blame it on the brokerage, right? Just say, this is required by my office. What are they gonna do? Call your office and to check? No, but you know what? Whose butt is on the line at the end of the day? What I don't want is a call from my client 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now. I say that all the time when I'm making any kind of decision in life or business. How am I gonna feel about this action in 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? Am I gonna look back and be proud of how I handled myself, proud of the decisions that I made? That's just how I roll. Any other questions on the contract?
Can I say one thing really quick?
Yes.
Like, it'll be so fast. So like shameless plug to productivity coaching and transactional coaching or whatever. We pay these, I went through productivity coaching, paid the money for the help, and here's what I can tell you. My first contract I wrote up, I did all the things and called Jennifer, who's my productivity coach. And I was like, okay, can you look at this and make sure it's right? 4 hours on the phone because it was not right. And so that, my friend, is what we're paying for with, having a mentor or some type of coach or someone who knows what it should look like. That other agent could have looked me up, but there was no reason to with the way my offer was presented. And then moving forward on my second one, I went back to that one and referenced it and didn't have to spend 4 hours on the phone. And so like, that's shameless plug, if you're not paying a mentor or someone or have anyone who can help you.
Yes, I agree with that. I had a coach. I did not want to harm anybody in a transaction. I did not want to, like, I'm just super, obsessed with how I'm handling or representing people. And I just didn't want to feel like I was missing things. And so I hired, back then, our coach here, her name was Lisa Lobaugh. She's a broker now at another agency. But she put a second set of eyes on every single thing. And we met weekly, and she just taught me everything. And I felt like when I hit the ground running, which I did, I was able to always have a second set of eyes, somebody looking at it. And it really, what I feel like is it went from like what might have taken an agent a year or two to really get up to speed. I was up to speed really fast, and I was able to turn out those contracts. Okay, so buyer's estimate of cost, something that we're missing sometimes a lot on your estimate of cost is your admin fee. I have a preferred lender or two that I love sending my clients to, and I make sure that those lenders know what my admin fee is, so that when they do the cost sheet for their buyer, my admin fee is on there. So you can see it here down at the bottom. Also, a home warranty, it won't necessarily be on the buyer's estimate of cost from the lender, but you'll see on the next slide, if it's a cash offer and your buyer is paying for that themselves, you do want to put that on there. You want to show them that they're paying $650. It's better to just get as close as you can to that estimate versus just like, oh, surprise, I forgot to put that on here. When they go to closing, you're like, oh, that's $700 more than I thought it was going to be. Does that make sense? And transfer taxes. So you need to be utilizing the link, and if you need the link, stay after and I'll email it to you, or shoot me an email at jennifersellspittsburgh@gmail.com, and I will send you all the links to the school millage rates, the municipality millage rates, as well as the transfer taxes. All right, she's texting me right now. So that you're doing that homework. I have them saved up in the bar on my computer, the licensing website I have saved, the municipalities, the schools, as well as transfer taxes. Okay.
Which I have to tell you guys, is access to information over here is so much more streamlined than what we have to deal with.
Yeah,
Like it's-
even Westmoreland,
Yeah.
Westmoreland County is impossible to find certain data. Allegheny County is very thorough. You can find a lot of the information you're looking for.
I had to do something. Westmoreland, I was looking for something.
Oh yeah, it's not there. It's not there. Yeah, nowhere to be found. This is what one of my estimate of cost looks like. It's kind of small, I apologize. If for a cash purchase, make sure whatever program you're using, that if you're pulling the property tax prorations, and if you're reading your contract every day, you will know that some municipalities' school taxes work on a fiscal calendar, not on a calendar year. So it is July 1st through June 30th. So those prorations are going to look different versus the municipal and the county taxes that are going to be on a calendar year, which is January 1 through December 31. So you want to make sure. The program I use is Palm Agent, and I use it through Elite Closings. And if you put the address in there, it automatically knows what municipality you're in based on the zip code, and it figures those prorations out for you properly. But if this, for all intents and purposes, this is a cash, so I'm not using a lender to do the cost sheet. So I've included, make sure that the tax prorations are correct, that the home warranty is on there here at the end. My admin fee is here, and then it breaks out the transfer tax into state and city. So there are two different lines here. I have a client working in a very big budget, moving here from Georgia. And the first house that we went to look at, I did a cost sheet for him because I knew that he wasn't aware of our city transfer tax. And the city of Pittsburgh is 5%. 5% split between buyer and seller, so 2.5 on both sides. And he was like, huh? And for them, that was 5 figures. It was 5 figures. That's a lot of money. So again, bringing value and educating your clients as best you can. That transfer tax is going to differ upon, what municipality you're in. So you want to check that website regularly. especially if you're doing a cash offer. Any questions on either of these? It's kind of froze, whoops. Estimate of costs or lender's estimate of costs. I always try to make sure to get this lender's one, because when I go to fill out the contract, I need to know what the loan amount is. So now I can figure out what their down payment is, what their interest rate is, and the terms, which is, you know, the number of years. Does that make sense? Okay. So we saw this wheel earlier. I'm watching my time here. And we've got steps 1 through 7. So what is the life cycle of a complete transaction once executed? I only touched on some compliance things that really stand out to us here at the brokerage, that things that are missing. So in short, it depends, full contract to close steps. And I'm gonna zip through these in probably 5 minutes. And like I said, there's nuance that's missing in this next checklist. I would just want you to be prepared. So under contract, within 24 hours, send timelines and instructions to the buyer, send timelines and settlement information to the listing agent, send executed contracts and contact information to settlement, send executed contracts and settlement contact to lender, update the documents in command, and submit your commission to the market center. Then you're going to make sure your buyer has scheduled their inspections, confirm the date and time with the listing agent, confirm that the hand money is received and send the receipt to the listing agent, confirm then that mortgage application, we didn't talk about that, mortgage application is a 7-day timeline from the date of execution, not mortgage commitment. Remember the one that we talked about more before? Mortgage application is 7 days from execution. So make sure that's complete and send an update to the listing agent. Complete your inspections, review with the buyer, and complete the Pennsylvania form, the BRI, which is the buyer's reply to inspections. Notify settlement and lender ASAP if termination is likely, which I mentioned before, and submit the buyer's reply to inspections to the listing agent before midnight on your last 10th day. If it's 10 days, if it's 15 days or whatever, send it by midnight. Complete your inspection negotiations and notify settlement and lender that the transaction is moving forward. Complete the buyer questionnaire that you're going to get from settlement and return it back to them. Confirm that the appraisal is ordered. Review the appraisal with buyers and update the listing agent. I do daily in the first 2 weeks almost, but weekly check-ins with also settlement and the lender. Hey, how's it going? Is there anything you need from me? This is where we're at. If they get annoyed by that, tough luck. I'd much rather be preventing an issue down the road if I'm not paying attention and ignoring the process.
When you say review appraisal and update the listing agent, can you give some
Yeah,
details
let's,
on that?
so it's important to note that if you're reading the agreement of sale regularly, like I mentioned, there's a very clear line that says once the appraisal is ordered, if there are conditions to be met, or if the price didn't come in at value, you need to notify the listing agent. Any questions, drop in the chat. Oh, Doug, thank you. Oops, sorry, y'all. Let me go back up here. Oh, boo. Okay. The appraisal is bought and paid for by the buyer. It belongs to the buyer. All the information in it belongs to the buyer. If your property comes in at value, I feel confident telling the listing agent, property came in at value, we're good to go. That's it. I don't give them an amount. I don't tell them if it comes in over, it's none of their business. You do not want a seller, you might still be in negotiating of, or the seller might have agreed to a laundry list of repairs. And then if you make the snafu of telling the listing agent, oh, we're under contract for 300, it came in at 340. I've had a seller, even though they didn't know what it was, they knew it came in at value that it appraised. I've had a seller stop doing repairs. And he just said, well, move forward or don't, it appraised, so deal. Are they out of compliance in the contract? Yes. Have we already spent money appraising and inspecting? Are we going to terminate at that point? No. But it's at that point, it could be, you know, a legal issue, but you just want to keep it to yourself if there's other things going on, but following your timelines. Unless there's conditions that need to be met, so maybe you've got an FHA loan and there's some paint that needs to be scraped and painted because they don't like peeling paint anywhere. whatever those conditions may be. I just send a list of conditions. I don't send the value. I don't send that page as any of that information. I just send them the conditions because that value amount belongs to the buyer.
Like,
Yes.
so my first two were mortgage.
Mhm.
I left out the cash for the rest, but I didn't get.
That's,
I was just like
yeah,
called and told
yes.
what.
The reason why that is because technically the lenders are not really gonna share that with you. But if you develop relationships with good lenders and you're working with them regularly, they're gonna send it to you because they know that you're respectful of that information. But they always send a copy to the buyer. So if they have their own lender that you don't know very well, you can call your buyer and say, hey, is your appraisal come in? I'll say, yeah, hey, send me a copy. I wanna take a look at it, just make sure we're good.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. Did I cover that for you?
Yes.
Okay. Weekly check-ins, get the utility information from the listing agent and send it to the buyer. Send the commission statement to settlement, confirm mortgage commitment, sending a copy to the listing agent, scheduling your pre-settlement walkthrough. Note here, make sure that when you schedule that any repairs that have been agreed to, they're finished. So when you do your final walkthrough, the tub still isn't leaking or whatever. You're trying to make sure that those repairs have been completed that you agreed to. Schedule the closing, it's buyer's choice here. You'll reserve, the buyer will say Friday at 10 a.m. Great, you confirm that settlement's available. I do that a week or two in advance because they book up. They book up, especially at the first of the month and at the end of the month or on a Friday. I try to avoid the first day of the month, the last day of the month, and any Mondays and Fridays. I try to book closings on Tuesdays through Thursdays. Confirm utilities, confirm that the warranty is ordered if it was agreed upon. You're going to get the CD. CD stands for closing disclosure. That is a requirement from lenders. That has to be sent 3 days prior to closing. There's a graphic. If you look up Franklin Title or American Title, there's a really beautiful graphic that will show if you're closing on a Thursday, your CD must be issued and acknowledged on Monday. So it's a cool little graphic. I'll pull it up here in a second. But I use that all the time. I've saved it in my phone under folders, like in my pictures. If the CD has any corrections, make sure to send those to the lender. Then the lender sends the CD to title. They reconcile, right? Title's numbers with the lender's number. And then they issue what's called either the HUD or the ALTA, which is a different format of the CD because it shows both buyer and seller side. The CD will only typically show the buyer side, right? Because it's coming from their lender. So once those all reconcile, your buyer now has final funds to close. So you're going to confirm with the buyer, how are they coming with those funds? Are they bringing a certified check? Are they wanting a wire? If it's a huge amount, some settlement companies don't want a check, they want a wire. So you need to, talk to people and confirm that. And then within like a day, sometimes if you're lucky, sooner, you'll get the 3 magical words that you're looking for with every transaction, and it's clear close. Okay. Then you're going to complete the final walkthrough. I usually do my walkthroughs the day before or sooner if the repairs are complete. I never, ever, never, unless I absolutely have to, do a pre-settlement walkthrough on the day of closing. If you find something wrong that wasn't fixed or something new that's wrong, who's got time to fix it now? If you find it the day before, at least 24 hours, somebody's got a chance to maybe go in there and fix that or figure out what's going on. Yeah. Yes.
I don't wanna heckle you.
You're heckling me.
I know, but I always do it the day before also. And so I just had a listing, I had buyers last fall. We did our pre-settlement walkthrough the day before. The house was empty. They had moved down and the listing agent told me they're staying in a hotel overnight, closing, whatever. We close, everything's great. Buyers go to the house, the Ring doorbell's gone, the curtain rod, they went back
And took
after
more.
our pre-settlement walkthrough and took all the things. So it's kind of like, you're, darned if you do, darned if you don't.
No,
But-
because if those items are listed in the contract.
Yep.
If window treatments are listed in the contract, I say, and don't ever be afraid to cancel that settlement. if the terms have not been met and they've taken off with things that were listed to be included, I will postpone that settlement.
Well, so we had already signed, like we
Oh.
settled and they were moving in.
Yeah.
And so I called up the listing agent and I was like, you owe me money for a Ring doorbell and curtain rods, my friend.
Yeah.
And she argued with me and eventually the sellers got credit for the buyer got credit for those
Yeah.
things. But so that was just the like, they went back.
There's
And
always
then,
gonna
so-
be the crazies.
a little
There's
crazy.
always gonna be something that just, you're like, oh, we were perfectly fine until you did that. Like, why? I went to a final walkthrough. This was like 6 PM on a Thursday or Wednesday, and we were closing the next morning at 10 AM. The house was still full. They hadn't even started packing. This was a fully furnished 3-bedroom house. I'm walking through the house like, what? Where are they moving? And I called the agent on FaceTime and I said, look at this house. And he's like, okay, I'm on it. They had to call in first, they're like, oh, we'll be fine. I'm like, there's no way they can be out of this house, even with a moving company. They were out, but it took like 3 sets of family and friends and 2 trucks moving to storage to get it done. So, yeah. Okay, so systems and tools. I know I'm going over a smidge here, so hang in there with me. Know your documents. Know your documents. Once you've read that agreement of sale, read it again. Read the change of terms addendum. Read the appraisal contingency addendum. Know your documents. I use email templates. If you haven't created email templates in Gmail, you send the same information over and over. We call those repeatable systems. How do you scale your systems to be repeatable? You can tweak a couple of words in there, but I use email templates. Create calendar alerts. I use Google Calendar. I set alerts for when my handmaid's due, and I create it to where it reminds me the day before, or when are the buyer's reply to inspection due. The minute we go under contract and I send all those timelines to the other side and to my buyer, I immediately pull out my phone and put all of my calendar dates into Google Calendar. Review your documents thoroughly. If you're using a coach, they'll look those through with you and send you your suggestions to update. Send weekly updates to all parties. Develop a list of preferred vendors and referrals. That's inspection companies, plumbers for camera tests, lenders, settlement, and communicate. Last week, Megan was consistency. Communicate. Oh, I got these out of order. Look at me. Under contract is the last one. So I typically send a gift card or some sort of closing gift. This is at the end, once you close or about to close, sending closing reminders to the buyer the day of, because they'll be like, oh, it's somewhere in all my emails. I text them the address, the hyperlink, so they can just click on their text thread and come straight to the office with the date, time, and location, the funds that they should be having, the IDs that are required, and any questions for the seller. What questions, Jennifer? Well, is there a code for the garage door? What day is trash pickup? What day is recycle pickup? Those are just great questions to come to closing with. Closing day, be on time. Be on time. Make sure that you have, and to me, on time is early. You want to make sure everybody's here, the settlement's here. Make sure to submit the HUD and ALTA and the settlement checks to the Market Center admin. Upload all your documents to Command and confirm that the MLS has been updated to sold with your name on it, because I found that happened once before. It wasn't done. And it had somebody else's name. I was like, no, that's me. I want credit for that. So does anybody here or online have any questions for me regarding some of this content? Again, it's like a fast and loose overview. Does anybody have questions on contract to close with buyers?
Information that shows in the slides.
I can't believe I got it right down to the money.
And-
Okay, I'm gonna take a look at the chat. Is there a way she can send these slides to me? They're perfect for keeping track of things in the deal. Yes, Alana's gonna have, this is a recorded video. So you can ask for the link to YouTube and you can watch these. If you'd like for me to send, I can share. I'm gonna put my email address here. Oops. That's my email address. If you just copy and paste that and send me a request in Gmail, I'll share the link to my PowerPoint. Again, this is fast and loose. This is missing a lot of nuance. There's a ton of stuff that happens in the middle and in behind the scenes on this kind of transaction. Okay, got it, Rich. Excellent. Any other questions for me or for specific things that have happened that you have a question to?
It's a little, I don't know, just what's your general role that you use to come up with?
That's a good question. So she's asking, what is the rule of thumb with determining hand money? If you're talking about a low priced, maybe like investor special, you do not want to do the 1% rule. You still want to show the seller that you're serious and that you're not just going to terminate and lose $200 and not care. But the rule of thumb for me is like 1%. In this market, it's more, because I really want to send a message with my buyers that they're serious, that they're liquid, which means, you know, so they've got cash, and that it's going to hurt if we terminate out of compliance.
So let's see.
So a $300,000 transaction, I would probably do $5,000.
Okay.
Normally, a year and a half ago, it'd be 3,000, maybe 3,500, so 1% of the purchase price.
Okay.
But I would tweak that, because you really want to send a message that you're serious and you're not going to terminate at the last minute. Or if you do, it's going to hurt. It's gonna hurt. Any other questions? Okay, who else is in there? Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, everybody, thanks again for coming today. I really appreciate it. Make sure you're here next Wednesday at noon for Ally and listings, and you guys have a great week. Yay. Thanks.